Welcome back to another episode of Horror of the Worlds, where we talk about horror movies and how they were influenced. I'm Curtis Gerhardt,
I'm Stephen Miller.
and today we are talking about single room, one location type horrors because I feel like this is actually a subgenre of it that's kind of hard to whittle down.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right.
So one of the things I kind of thought about, like when it comes to single room location or one room horror movies, I feel like a lot of it is budgetary reasons. It is they don't have a lot of money to actually go out and do multiple sets, or they have to reuse one set to make it look like many. So which kind of changes the whole creativity of the writer, which movies start with the writing. So if a movie's bad, you could usually blame the writer because that should actually hold some weight.
Oh, I get where you're coming from on that. I mean, there are plenty of movies that are done off of books that are single location, and either you love it or hate it, but it's usually based on the fact that it was written that way. Like The Shining, it wasn't necessarily written that way, but the movie is definitely single location.
I still haven't read or listened to one Stephen King book. I really do need to.
You watch plenty of Stephen King movies, but haven't read the books.
Yeah, especially with one of his movies coming out here very soon, The Monkey.
Yeah, God,
that one looks
stoked about that one.
Especially with the bucket.
Oh yeah,
I really do want to get the bucket.
I want to get that bucket.
But yeah, so usually with these movies, it's budgetary with what I've noticed. It's either they get a big star and they have one room, or they just make one room very unique. One of the ones I always kind of think of is one with Robert Downey Jr. It's like two girls and one guy or whatever. Not two girls, one cup. But they're not so much trapped. Robert Downey Jr. is kind of trapped in a nice bed, like a nice room in the high rise in New York. And these two women are pretty much keeping them hostage because he was secretly seeing both of them. So that is like a one room, one location, because they're in a single house.
Yeah.
But one of the movies that did this incredibly well, especially when you actually learn how they shot it and how they filmed it, is Cube, that came out in 1997. So this movie is, without remembering how they got there, several strangers awaken in a prison of cubic cells, some of them booby-trapped. There is one-time cop, Quentin, scientist Holloway, young math genius, Levin, master of escapes, Renz, autistic savant, Kazan, and architect, Worth, who might have more information on the maze than he lets on. The prisoners must use their combined skills if they are to escape. It feels like I wrote that sentence. It just didn't make sense in a weird way.
It feels like it was almost the baseline for Squid Games. Like, Squid Games might have taken
I could see them doing a little bit of that.
A little escape plan thing going on.
Well, there was I didn't write down the name of the game because I forgot to look it up, to be honest. There is a game on Steam that is based like this, where you are trapped in a room and you got to go to choose one of the four rooms that's around you. I think you go up or down, and it's pretty much this movie where it's each one's booby trapped. If it's like acid, or if there's a creature in there, or fire or something like that, that's what this movie is as well. And they kind of quickly learned they could use their shoes to kind of throw in another room to set off the booby trap. And
smart.
If it's clear, they kind of jump in. But
that eventually fucks you up, doesn't it?
It does, because people die, or they lose their shoes, or everyone only has a pair of shoes.
Right.
But that's the thing, though. That only sets off traps that you could see. I think one of the traps there was a gas, so it's kind of hard. Like, that room's clear, and it's like, wait, and then but it's filling up with the gas, like a poisonous gas. Right. So that is also very unique. This movie was directed by Vincenzo Natali. It came out in 1998. I don't know if I already said that. This is also a movie that I would highly recommend, because like how it was filmed, it is multiple rooms, but it is one room. So when they're being recorded in one room, and they'll change the lighting or the whatever in a different room, or on the outside if you're looking outside that cube, and they'll leave that cube, but they're just entering the same exact cube. Is like how it's being shot.
Yeah. All right.
So it's budgetary reasons. Like, it is, to me, very amazing on how they actually reuse one location.
I feel like I've seen quite a few movies that were done like that, and it was actually shocking when you watch how it was made kind of thing. You're like, damn, no, they kept me involved with Very little.
And you feel claustrophobic in this one too. Like even though
That's what I feel like the whole premise. My favorite kinds of movies are the ones that play against phobias. Like Sting played against the arachnophobia, and things like Underwater played against thalassophobia, and to me the root of all of these things is being involved with that, your phobia in a small area. And now you're adding another phobia to your phobia. So claustrophobia feels like it always plays a card in these kinds of movies.
Big thing, especially when it comes to that kind of claustrophobia. Like, you know, there's death around each corner in each room, and you don't know how to get out. You don't know why you're there. A lot of these people don't know why they're there.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like the movie Platform, which they're kind of stuck on each level, but you sign up for that movie. This one, I want to say they never really find out. I haven't watched the sequels all the way through. Like, there are a prequel to this one. There's Cube Squared.
Yeah.
They get kind of clever with the names. There was also one that came out in 2021 that I want to say is on Screambox, if I'm not mistaken. Which this one is shot like almost like a Korean soap opera, like how things are shot. Each one has their own like music theme when they're introduced.
Oh, nice.
So it feels like you're watching a real world or something like that. So it's like a Jersey Shore version of The Cube.
Right.
But at the same time, though, each one of these, they reuse the characters in the sequels as well. Like, so one's a cop. I think the next one's like a security guard in the next movie. Like, scientists change. The form of autism changes and stuff. So they eventually figure out how to read each room and know which room is rotating, because these cubes do interchange and they do move around and stuff. So I don't want to spoil this old movie because I don't remember the theory that they use to do the math to realize which cube moves where and when and what position it is in the whole Rubik's Cube of a design.
Right.
Because I am not that intelligent to describe that, even if I freaking wrote it down or if I was reading it off.
The next movie that I want to talk about is actually a Stephen King book turned into a movie called The Mist. It's directed by, the one I'm talking about is directed by Frank Darabont. It was released in 2007, and the vibe that this one gives, it starts out feeling more like a single location, and then it becomes a single room scenario. Like, in my opinion, the terror really picks up and it becomes single room, and you are now feeling, even though this location of a room is roomy, you feel the walls closing in as the plot thickens.
I feel that way with Azrael.
Yeah.
It's a Samara Weaving in a forest. But I felt claustrophobic in that movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the location doesn't really matter much when it comes to claustrophobic. But I mean, what I'm trying to say is size does not matter. Size does not matter, women. All 13% of you. That's
all right. Here's the overview of this one. After a powerful storm damages their Maine home, it's always with fucking Maine and Stephen King. David Drayton and his young son head to the town to gather food and supplies. Soon afterward, a thick fog rolls in and engulfs the town, trapping the Draytons and others in the grocery store. Terror mounts as deadly creatures reveal themselves outside, but that may be nothing compared to the threat within, where a zealot calls for a sacrifice. Now, I feel like when I was watching this, I could have read the cast and I wouldn't have known them as much as I know their previous roles. Like Laurie Holden, she's one of the main characters in there, and I know her from The Walking Dead. She was I can't remember her name in The Walking Dead.
She was the hot mom.
No, she wasn't the mom. She was
the hot sister, the older sister. I'm sorry, I haven't watched The Walking Dead since it came out.
We can put a picture up of her, but yes. she's
oh, her.
Yeah. Thomas Jane, who I think I remember him mostly from the first Punisher movies that came out.
The actual
first
good
Punisher
ones.
Movie.
Oh,
the first one.
The first big one, because there was one with Dolph Lundgren.
The one with John Travolta in it.
All right.
Yeah.
Because we got to be more specific with that one, because Dolph came out with one, I think, back in the 80s or early 90s, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
That no one talks about. Same with Roger Corman's Fantastic Four movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
That no one talks
Nobody
about.
talks about. Jeffrey DeMunn, who also played the older gentleman in The Walking Dead. There's actually quite a few people from The Walking Dead in this. The more you watch it, Melissa McBride.
So that's how they end up getting the cast for The Walking Dead. Is they just picked up all the dead from the mist and they just brought them down to Georgia.
Right. One of my there are quite a few people. You're gonna watch this, fucker. You're gonna watch this movie and you're gonna recognize a lot of people, and that's kind of what pulled me into it when I was first watching it. But I feel like with this single room in particular, the character's personality gets deeper and deeper. The more you get trapped with somebody, the more you get to know somebody. And when things are attacking you, you really get to know who's a fighter and who's a runner.
Who's going to be throwing you down and who's going to be picking you up.
Yeah, and the Zealot is what really made this plot fucking thicken, because it showed how people use media and religion for fear. So they let the weak minds be preyed upon with this fear, and you gain more followers and manipulate people into doing what you want to be done. That was only the surface of this whole thing getting crazy, because in this particular situation, people start dying quickly. So you find out who's full of shit and who's not.
That's the thing. So I went into this movie. I only seen it once, and I heard that you should buy the physical copy and watch it in black and white because it is scarier. But I didn't know anything about going into this movie, and I haven't seen it since when it came out. Like, I didn't realize that I felt like it was a H.P. Lovecraft movie.
Oh,
because
yeah,
like there were the tentacles, and it felt very Lovecraftian when it comes to these weird creatures.
It reminded me more of Starship Troopers, because they were more bug-like with their fucking ugly arms and shit. But it was, for me, this one wasn't really driven by the creatures, and that's the first time that I've watched a creature feature where the creature's barely seen.
They weren't the feature.
They weren't the feature. It was really like the whole cast absolutely killed it to help you feel the fear of this whole movie.
You know, that kind of almost has that I can't think of the word, that relationship with The Walking Dead, almost with how you're talking about it, is because the creatures weren't really the show, much like on The Walking Dead. The zombies weren't really the show. After a while, you realize it.
That's not talking shit about the makeup artists, because they did do a great job in the presentation of the zombies and all that stuff. But yes, after a while, you get used to the way they look. So it's no longer the main drive of what me as a horror fan is actually going after. It's more like, how the fuck are they going to make it out alive?
Yeah.
What about this character dynamic and all this stuff where people are being forced to work together? And even in that one, they used a religious zealot in order to push a certain type of fear. And you're like, how are some of these people going to actually follow that in such a situation? Like, the answers are in front of you, and yet you're looking for it elsewhere. What the fuck is driving you to do this?
Pretty much like however makes them feel calm. You know,
Right.
like
It's
regardless of...
It's a fucking blanket. Ignorance is bliss. And once it's just, in my opinion, it's hard to be ignorant when you already know the fucking truth. In this kind of situation in particular, I'm not going to sit there and act like I know all about death or anything, but when we're talking about what's going on right now, you're going to tell me that we need to just pray it all away? You're absolutely nuts. It's not going to make these big bugs stop killing us.
Yeah.
So
that's the thing. Pray for the soul, but be awake for what's in front of you.
Yep.
You know, just because you're...
Act for the existence.
Yeah. Just because like you're acting not religious doesn't mean that you're not religious.
Right.
I think that's how I always kind of saw like any kind of religion is. It should be something that feeds the soul, feeds the body, like feeds the mind, not so much forcing the body to do something.
Yeah.
You know, or forcing other people's bodies to do something. I guess it's a take. I don't want to say it's a hot take because I feel like that word's being...
I just feel like that character, like whether it be in The Walking Dead for what it was, 1 or 2 seasons, where that character was pivotal, or in this movie in particular, where it's where I started to feel scared. And it's because I've lived, I don't want to say I've lived that moment in particular, but I have seen what that kind of blindness can do to the brain. Like there's a lack of give a fuck for the people around you when you listen to these kinds of things and don't act upon like logic. You know what I mean? You're hoping you don't have to do what you don't want to do, and that's not a way to get anything done.
Yeah.
So I felt a bit of a connection to the fear in that movie, and it wasn't. I like with that character development being so involved with the storyline, I didn't even think about the fact that it was a single location, because the whole thing is how the fuck are we going to get out of here?
Yeah.
And that's when you start thinking about the single location.
The location doesn't become a character until it does, especially in that movie. And I know The Mist actually goes on a lot of different lists of the most sad endings or the most fucked up
You're
endings.
impatient, but are you this impatient?
Yes. Give me a gun and I'll show you, goddammit. I'm just but yeah, that's the thing is I feel like the whole argument, and we were talking about the car scene right there, is when does a single location not become a single location, and when does it become one? Like what? Because much like The Mist, you are stuck in that whole a grocery store, you know, like the mini mart, I guess, and then they do eventually leave, not far, but they do leave. Yeah. So it kind of doesn't become a single location anymore, but I would still consider it a single location. Like if you look up,
I mean, in the beginning, you start off at a home and then you go to the location, and then it becomes a single location, like a single room, for a little bit, right? But yeah, in order for the story to develop onward, they have to go into the parking lot, and now it's more of a location, less of the room. Because that's the thing. It still has the fight back still makes it feel claustrophobic in a way.
Like if you look up single location movies, you'll get Misery. Speaking of another Stephen King, but I don't see that as a single. It is a single location, but you know, you still got the car drive on the way to her house before the hobbling scene. You got Rear Window, which you're stuck in a one man's room because his leg is broken, and he's looking at another apartment. Right. You know, he's a peeping Tom. I don't know if that's a single location because you're not in one location at the same time, but Google has it as it.
I feel like
even Maximum Overdrive is a single location.
Stuck at the gas station, right? But you're at least outside.
Yes. Well, no, they were stuck in kind of like outside. They were stuck with a bunch of different diesel trucks going around them. But they were also they showed scenes from a baseball field where the Mythbusters shot kids. I think it was like Adam Savage or Jamie Heineman end up doing the soda machine that shot the cans. Yeah. Or they did it for the commercial, I think, but I can't remember. But Biodome is on that list. Oh, I never think of Biodome being a single location.
That's a good point. It just feels like with the fact that each sub-location in that movie makes it feel like a different environment, it feels less claustrophobic. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, with some of these other movies, being stuck in like Cube, being stuck in a room that looks like that, it feels like the walls are closing in. Yeah. Like there's very little to it, and you get bored with your surroundings quickly.
That's why I felt like The Mist, I can't really argue that much of it being single room or not. I feel like that's like where you start to kind of escape on where it's potentially a bigger world out there. But I still feel like it's a single room because they go from the grocery store into a car. Like they're always trapped in a.
That car doesn't leave far from that fucking parking lot though. So I mean, yeah, a majority of the terror, a majority of the action, it's all done inside of a single room. So I mean, that's why I'd consider it a single room for sure.
And the one that started making these movies big is Saw. We saw a huge influx on single room or one location horror movies when Saw came out. This was it came out in 2004. I feel like we all know this, but here it goes. A hospital orderly, Lee Winnell, which is also one of the writers, which he co-wrote it with James Wan, who directed this movie. Both some Aussie boys. I don't know if that was an accent or not. Judge me as you wish. A hospital orderly tells a police officer that he was kidnapped and forced to commit a horrific act to survive. If someone were to tell me that, if you were to tell me that description, I would not say, sounds like Saw.
Yeah. No, definitely not.
So they are trapped in a bathroom. And
an ugly, hideous bathroom.
Oh, gross. I mean, there's like what you assume is poop-filled toilets. You
could almost feel how slick the floor is from the mildew or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The room, you could see the smell.
And you see a body with his brain blown out with a puddle of blood in his head and a gun in his hand. So this is one of my arguments is I feel like it is a single room location, like horror, but there are other things going on outside with cops trying to find them. Yeah, the black detective that's always watching.
You're absolutely right.
Where you're always watching Carrie Ewells, Lawrence's character, his apartment for his wife because he's cheating and all that stuff. But you have that gentleman's apartment. You have Lee Winnell's apartment, and I think was it a car parking lot where he ends up getting kidnapped. So these are different locations in this movie, but that's just plot for the main plot of the movie. So that's my argument is I don't know how to classify it.
I could see why you'd have troubles with this one in particular. I feel like it's really hard to set up a storyline in one room. Not saying it hasn't been done.
Oh, Cube. Cube. Yeah. That was all, if I'm not mistaken, that was all in the Cube. There was no flashbacks because a lot of these things they're shot in a flashback form.
Right. And then you got to deal with fact versus what you're watching. Like, what's that movie? Dave Made a Maze.
Oh, one of my favorite movies.
You know for a fact that was done in the same fucking room, but every time it feels like there's a room change. So you know it's a single location film.
That's the thing. I wanted to add that one to this. Like I'm saving that for another episode, but I love that movie so much because again, they did the same thing that Cube kind of did because they had one room with all the cardboard. When they were done with all those scenes, they moved the cardboard around to make it look like another freaking room.
So
that's a room trapped inside of another room.
It's the exact opposite of what we're talking about. We want in this one, it could be 10 different fucking locations, but you want it to feel like the same location. Versus that one, it's the same location, but you want it to feel like 10 different locations. I
think that's the thing. If you were to say Saw, like if you ask someone, what do you think of Saw? First thing they'll say is, which one?
Yeah, yeah absolutely, yeah.
But at the same time, though, if you say the very first Saw, they're going to think like, oh, that's not a splatter horror, the whole splat pack. But they're going to think of the bathroom.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what actually makes it a one location movie is if you say, what do you think of this movie? What triggers it? What's the first thing that triggers? Bathroom. Stuck in a bathroom, one location, and that's it. Like,
not to mention they're chained to the fucking wall, man. Mm-hmm. I mean, it only adds to the claustrophobic feeling.
I mean, they even make fun of it in Scary Movie 4 with Shaq and...
The same guy that was stuck in the actual movie was making fun of it. There was I want to say it was maybe one of the Scary Movies that one of the guys that was actually in the movie, in that scene, made fun of that movie in a different movie.
You lost me completely because it was Dr. Phil and Shaq.
All right, that's in that one.
Yeah.
But there's another. I can't remember whether it was what is it, Saturday Night Live or some shit like that. They were making fun of it.
I could definitely want to say it was
like
skit.
I want to say it was like Scary Movie 2 or something like that. The same the short skinny guy, not the guy that was in The Princess Bride. The other guy.
I think Scary Movie 2 came out before Saw.
Maybe. I don't know. I gotta look.
But yes, I'll let you look that up, and while he's looking that up, I'm gonna just kind of ramble on, which some non-interesting facts is yes, there are 10 Saw movies. Another one coming out later on here in 2025, I believe, but not all of them are single location horror movies. One is shot in a house, but also in a warehouse. I feel like the first one is the only more so one location and stuff because that's that one room where everything's happening compared to all the other ones. They're moving from room to trap. Or even Tobin Bell in the latest Xmas one, where he travels all throughout Mexico just to create a giant warehouse trap.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff. So that's the thing. I think Saw kind of has that weird open ending where it's not so much one room. It's... I don't know. That's one thing. I think the structure of this episode is like you have something that's one room and slowly verges out into possibly multiple locations, but still one location, which I want to say is your movie.
Yes. Now, what I like about this one is how you do one location to the budgeting. They made the theme of the movie fit the fact that there could have been a low budget involved with this, and it just felt natural.
Mm-hmm.
The movie is Green Room, 2015. It has a all-star fucking cast, in my opinion. Jeremy Saulner, I believe, is the director's name. So here's the overview.
Picard in it too.
Yeah,
I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it does. A punk rock band becomes trapped in a secluded venue after finding a scene of violence. That's the first time I've seen that spelled out. Like, I don't know why it was hard.
See, it really is not that easy, is it?
For what they saw, the band themselves become targets of violence from a gang of white power skinheads who want to eliminate all evidence of the crime. Now, the beauty of that last part was the fact that there were several things leading up to it, because when you're talking about a punk band, you have a lot of fuck you involved. Mm-hmm. Fuck you is what they went on stage with.
That's what punk is supposed to be.
Yes.
It's supposed to be anarchist.
But what was beautiful about this was there was a moment of understanding where the skinhead punks and the punk punks kind of like went, all right, cool, we get it. Because they go on stage and they play Nazi punks fuck off. And that's awesome. They told a room full of skinheads to eat shit and die. And you thought that was what was going to get them killed. You're fucking wrong. No. You had a mutual understanding, like, all right, cool.
See, that's a kind of off topic a little bit, but that's the beauty about music. Music and movies bring everyone together.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter your background or whatever. If you like the same music, you like the same music. You
right.
know, regardless of your niche. You know, I mean, Nazis are okay when they're listening to punk music.
Fuck Nazis.
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
The two biggest actors in this movie is Patrick Stewart and Anton Yelchin. Anton Yelchin, this was one of his last performances. I don't want to say it was his last, but it was one of the last movies that came out before he died. I'm sure there were other ones that he had done and were on the shelf and released after he died and all that shit. And I'm pretty sure Star Trek was after this too. So there was a few movies afterwards, but this was one of the final like horror movies that he did. Another thing I loved about this movie was the fact that Patrick Stewart plays the head fucking skinhead.
I think that's one of the reasons he wanted to do this role, because he doesn't do those movies.
It is so good. Like, this man is a Shakespearean actor from, like, I mean, that's where he got his start, was doing Shakespearean plays. Yes.
Like, he usually plays these brainy, you know, awesome people. Unless you're, the lead of the CIA in American Dad. I cannot remember.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Yes, his character in that one is a bit ditzy, but has power and uses that for his leverage. In this one, he's still a highly intelligent being, and that's what makes his character so terrifying.
He's scary.
Yes, like you would expect this man to be a warlord with the way he operates this single room. A broken down, dingy ass dive bar where you would, without this skinhead's presence, probably fucking hesitate to go into regardless.
If this man walked into a room and I was the only one in that room and he gave me that stare,
oh yeah,
I honestly have no idea if I would piss first or pass out.
Yes,
you know, me personally, like, because he is a scary motherfucker in this movie. Like,
right,
he is. Oh my god.
So
go on.
to build up this tension, of course, it had to start off somewhere else. You know what I mean? But the whole action of this movie, it does take place inside of that bar. And it feels claustrophobic in a way, because they don't leave the bar per se, but they definitely leave the room and try to gain.
And that's the thing, the bar
intel
as a
each room.
Building as well, because it's not so much the bar, because you have the dance floor, then you have a little bit of a bar, and then they have the office that's kind of in the back.
Yeah,
and that's where
the green room is literally where they're chilling out at, and that's where the chaos happens. Is somebody says, hey man, just grab y'all's shit and get out of here. We'll talk about this in a different room. Don't go in there right now. And somebody goes, wait, my phone's in that room, and just doubles back anyway. And they witness some shit they shouldn't have, and that's where it all closes in. And
that's where your fists will start to clench a little bit. It's like, oh man,
this is a white knuckling movie the whole way through. Like, you're definitely terrified for the characters. You feel for only one side of this one, clearly, because Nazi punks can fuck off.
And that's the thing too with this movie, is they even enhance it. It's already, how do you enhance a movie that's already feeling claustrophobic and you don't know how you're going to escape from this one? They add freaking German shepherds to this, or they add dogs to it,
vicious ass fucking dogs.
And
this is the first time where I'm like, oh, Like every time I'm like, oh, but it's just a dog. No, in this one you want to kick that fucker in the grill.
That's
like,
the thing. Like you don't want to see. You never want to see a dog die, but you
this
actually
one you don't.
you get that feeling of like this dog kind of needs to die. Like
there's a moment where emotions sway on that whole situation, and I mean you can understand that there are more bad people involved. It's like there's no such thing as a bad dog, just a bad owner.
Yes.
And I can wholeheartedly agree with that.
100%.
Yeah. So I mean, still want to kick the dog in the throat.
If it's a dog or me,
if dog's
I'm gonna choose a dog.
Dog's wearing a swastika, it's a Nazi. Like, fuck it.
I think that if I remember correctly too, like once when one of those Nazi guys actually sees his dog, one of his dogs dead or injured, you see him becoming more human. Because at the end of the day, an owner of a pet, it is your kid.
Yeah,
no matter. If I remember this movie, because I mean, there are a lot of movies like where they have the antagonist has a dog, and you always see them being this hard ass motherfucker. Then all of a sudden their dog dies, and it's just like you see them break down in tears.
So that is one of the situations you almost see some kind of humanity roll across him, but it's not like we just need to leave these people alone. It's like, no, I'm not letting my dogs go in there and kill people until I have more control over the situation. He's not going to stop doing the heinous shit that he's doing. He doesn't want to put his dogs in the middle of his soldiers.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was. Because he was sending them in to do a job, and they wait, there's firearms in there. My dogs are going to die. I don't want them to go in there.
Yeah.
But one of his dogs, if I'm not mistaken, one of the injured dogs rats them out, which again, I kind of lead to an argument if this is actually a single location horror movie.
So to me it is. All of the location, it's acreage, right? So they had to go onto acreage in order to get to this location. The majority of the movie, I want to say 75% or more, probably more like 86% of this movie is done inside of that bar. The conclusion of the movie is done outside of the bar. But the whole point is, how are we going to escape? How far can we escape? Just like in The Mist, it's 2 steps forward, 4 steps back. Like they were getting nowhere with that whole thing, and that kind of how this whole movie feels, and that's how it plays on the claustrophobic feeling. Is every time you're like, yeah, we're out of the fucking room, it's like, no, get your ass back in there because people are fucking dying.
It's almost like a trench warfare.
Yeah,
like you fight, you go up a trench, and then obviously you got to kind of go back.
Now you got to
we just lost ground.
Yeah,
and that's what it is. It is like you go back and forth, and it's. I think that's one of the things that adds tension, and it's a very well thought out storyline.
Yes,
it's not just like, oh, they're just moving forward, or they're just these situations up here, and they have to go forward, or they have to move back.
But once again, it's the characters that definitely kept me involved with this. Like Anton Yelchin's character was definitely a main drive for the.
He was a kid, wasn't he?
Well, he was. I mean, I don't think during this movie. I mean, he was probably in his mid-20s, but he was supposed to be playing like fresh out of high school kind of character. You know what I mean? He wasn't supposed to be playing too much younger than he actually was.
I'm trying to remember because wasn't it? Yeah, I want to say that that was a kid that I think he had a stroke or some sort, and his car accidentally ran over him.
It wasn't a stroke. What had happened was the fucking e-brake fucking failed, and it rolled down his driveway while he was getting the mail and ran his ass over.
I thought it was like some kind of a medical issue that, like, I think it was like the e-brake, but it was like a mass incident of.
Maybe it's a combination of the two. I know that it was the newer Jeep that ran his ass over, and that's how he died.
Still onto his fucking cars.
Fucking Jeeps. But yeah, that was. He still felt super young as far as the character involvement in that movie.
Like
Neil Patrick Stewart was younger than he is now for sure. I mean, 2015.
Well, that's the thing. Like, even going with Anton, like when I first started watching this movie, I thought it was Elijah Wood because he kind of has that same kind of like that soft face with a really face. Like the piercing eyes. Well, that kind of.
It's Cooties. Cooties is definitely him.
I need to watch it.
That's a good one, especially if you're like, to hell with the kids, kill them. Like, that's a movie where you're rooting for the parents to kill the children.
That's where you find a good one that swallows. I wonder what that was going to be.
But yeah, I feel like this is the one movie where I definitely grew more of a respect for Patrick Stewart's acting. I mean, that dude is absolutely amazing, and this movie was a flex, in my opinion. Like his intelligence, his acting chops alone, but the fact that he brought so much logic to the amount of hate, and you're like, holy fuck! It's like, fuck that guy, but you can't argue with him. Like,
I almost want to say that too, because I, as a casual fan of his, because I'm pretty sure there are some diehard Patrick Stewart fans where they're like, no, he did this movie, he did that movie, where he's like this and that movie. It's like, I'm more of a casual fan of his, you know, where it's like I have only seen him in a couple movies playing almost the same kind of character. You know, I know him as a voice actor, like I said before, with American Dad, where he has that range of that character, but you don't really see him physically acting as a actual hardcore
I know more of as a voice
badass.
actor. Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, in Star Trek: The Next Generation.
That's why I said like a weird hardcore badass. He's a badass in that, but he's.
Looking back at that show, it was almost comedic, but that's one of the, like, you know,
That's Star Trek.
Star Trek. It's nerdy and funny, but he was theatrical in his performance in that one. With this one, it was almost terrifying. Like, yeah, no, he definitely brought the horror into this one. But overall, it felt more like an action movie. With that being said, it had to use the feeling of claustrophobia to invoke the horror. Other than that, it was.
I think this is that movie kind of treads that whole, what A24 does well. If I'm not mistaken, it's an A24 film where it is a horror movie, but there's that weird line of it's a thriller action with horror elements.
Yeah.
Like one of the ways that this movie had my heart too was, I do have a soft spot for Pacific Northwest.
Oh yeah, and this definitely takes place in Oregon.
You know, so I mean, if it feels that kind of green and it doesn't feel like Canada green, because usually you kind of tell like this feels more like Canada, or like even nowadays like New Zealand, but it's just when it feels like Oregon or out in the woods here.
Oh, and the best part about it is it's almost like a horror remake of the Clash's London Calling album cover, and it's got Anton Yelchin's character there. You can see that.
Oh,
like, instead of slamming the guitar, it's slamming a hatchet.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to use that gag again.
But yeah, to me, it was all about that punk rock, like putting punk rock in the middle of horror. Like, that's why I like things like Return of the Living Dead and The Living Dead 3.
Yeah.
Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Like, it definitely kept that punk rock kind of vibe with the horror.
This is one of those music horror movies as well, because as music isn't so much of a big theme in this movie, it is still a theme, much like a lot of these like metal horror movies or metal. It's not a musical, but metal plays a part in it. The punk music plays a part in this.
That was another fucking scene that definitely got me. Was when they went on stage, it was like their song, a certain song when it came on, that was supposed to be this is your time to act backstage. And that, like, as somebody that creates something, you never want to see what you've made be done with evil. And he was like, what was that last song you guys did? He told him the name of the song. He's like, yeah, man, that song rips. That's the song I killed her to. And you were like, oh man, there was like, it just carried so much fucking hate with it. I mean, it.
You don't know what power your words could have at times.
Yeah,
you know, especially when in music or video games or any stuff like that.
When you brought something to creation for pleasure and it gets used for hate, it makes you want to punch somebody.
But their hate's pleasure.
Yep, but their hate is pleasure. Absolutely.
And that's like one of the things, especially going into the Pacific Northwest woods. You go into another kind of single location, which could be argumentative, I guess. Again, I feel like I've said, take a shot every time I said that word. And if you're still alive, you made it this far. Is the Evil Dead franchise. Yeah. Yes, there are a couple, like the Ash vs. Evil Dead, the TV series, wasn't single location, but Evil Dead 1 and 2, Evil Dead Remake, 2013, I think it was, and I would almost even want to consider Evil Dead Rise.
Evil Dead Rise, 100%. I mean, it was more location more than single room, but yeah.
Which is the same thing, because if you remember the very first Evil Dead, they're driving the car up to the cabin.
Yes.
And stuff. Okay. Evil Dead Rise, they're in the basement, and they kind of go in the basement in the hallway, but they are still stuck in the high
Parking
rise
garage, yeah.
and stuff. So there's a little bit of reach for those, but at the same time, though, you're stuck in that cabin. The woods are alive, so the woods has its own character, and they're making you stay in the cabin where you can't get out. You're kind of stuck there, and then when people die or get possessed or what have you, fall under that spell, I mean, it's a fucking claustrophobic kind of movie. As comedic as Bruce Campbell's versions are, I mean, the Evil Dead remake there's no comedy in it. That is just a pure fucking horror movie.
Yeah, no, that one, it got me going a little bit. I really liked that one. That was the first remake I was undoubtedly enjoying the whole way.
I hated it when it came out.
I
enjoy it now. Cause that's
all right, it grew on you.
That was the thing. I went into it wanting Evil Dead. I wanted Bruce Campbell. I wanted that comedy. I wanted that blood and laughter, but it wasn't there at the time. But now I understand it. It's being brutal and gruesome as it is. It's a solid movie. But I mean, that's Fede Alvarez as well. He is a phenomenal French extremist. I shouldn't say French extremist director, but he's a very great director. But Lee Cronin's Rise, another one that had that comedy but wasn't really centered.
I felt like it tipped its hat to the first.
It dipped its hat in the Bruce Campbell's movies a lot. Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people didn't like Rise, was because it was not its own movie. It was a homage movie.
That's funny because I liked the 2013 one because I went in there going, this has nothing to do with Bruce Campbell, so I'm not going to expect anything from it. But for some reason with Rise, I went in there expecting something like Bruce Campbell, and I got none of that.
Yeah.
I think part of it's because reading so much from the fact that they were going to do a Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, and then that got kiboshed, and then they're let's finish off the TV series with a movie, and then they haven't come out with that yet. Still coming, but we don't know when.
Oh, the TV movie?
Yeah, I heard that they were going to finish off.
I think Bruce Campbell is gone though. He's not playing Ash anymore. He's officially retired. But last I heard, it was supposed to be a TV series with the original characters, but Ash went into the future. Spoiler if you haven't seen season 3, but he does go into the future, and I think it takes place in the past and stuff, where I wish I could remember the two actors, or at least their stage names, with them fighting over.
Okay.
Which supposedly there's a rumor that they might be showing up in the later Evil Dead movies, which there's a new one coming out here relatively soon.
Yes.
But I don't know, and I don't really trust anything that anyone says when it comes to that, because a lot of it, people are just trying to get news out there without actually having facts, or they're just making fake news.
Right. Well,
so I'd rather just say something I actually know, and we actually know, because you could go pick it up off the shelf and boom, there's a fucking movie.
Right.
Instead of such and such website said this, or
I'm
going on a rant.
I had to do what you did and rewatch the movie without try to erase my expectations and just enjoy it. And that's when I caught a lot of the homage to the first ones and stuff like that. And I rewatched it, and when I was watching it, I was thinking, I would hate it if I loved something so much. I tried to make my version of it or a spin-off of it, and everybody fucking despised it. You know what I mean? But after a second watch, it's a great fucking movie. It captured all the horror that the first ones were trying to do, and that the remake did so well, and it felt like a good mesh.
That's the thing. Bruce Campbell was bigger than the movie, and he's the one that warped Evil Dead. I mean, granted, Evil Dead is Bruce Campbell.
Motherfucker's sick of being Ash.
I don't think he's sick of being Ash. I think he's sick of doing the stunts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what it is. He recognizes it for what it is, and yeah, he's good. But I want to say they did a Ash versus. What is it? Freddy versus Jason versus Ash? I want to say that was a comic book.
They did the comic book, and that's, if I'm not mistaken, that's why they wanted to add Ash into the Evil Dead, or not the Evil Dead, the Freddy versus Jason. But the Freddy versus Jason movie, was in the works, I think, since the late 80s. So that was in the works for decades before it actually came out.
What I heard was if you look at Ash versus, you look at the Evil Dead franchise, and then you look at Jason Goes to Hell. Mm-hmm. Jason's supposed to be a Deadite, and that's why you can't fucking kill him. I thought that fan fiction would have just made an awesome crossover series for sure.
The seeds were planted. Seeds were planted for so long for so many movies. I mean, that's when, if you want to get in the whole argument on the timeline for Friday the 13th, why did he go out to outer space all of a sudden? Because Freddy vs. Jason was supposed to come out before, but they wanted another Jason movie. So if you went so far out in the future, it's like, oh, Freddy vs. Jason can still happen.
Yeah, wasn't that an old joke? Like a movie franchise goes on long enough, eventually they're just going to go to space, and that's when you know it's on its way down. It's going to die now.
It didn't kill Leprechaun. Well, granted, Leprechaun was never...
It didn't kill Jason either. Fuck you, I like Jason X. But Freddy vs. Jason was amazing, and I fucking loved it, and it was after Jason X.
That is one of the movies where you... Oh, man. I think you just kind of have to go in and just accept it for what it is.
Yeah.
Because if you're going in like, oh, I'm a Freddy fan or I'm a Jason fan, you have to go in just being like, this movie's going to be a hot trash. Let's just enjoy it. Like fair. Almost speaking of like the music, almost kind of speaking of like the Green Room, quick run back is Uncle Peckerhead. I don't know if you've seen that movie. It is not a great movie, but if you're kind of itching for that music movie, that music horror, it's an okay movie. It is very Midwestern. So if you don't like their accents or that their slang, you probably won't like this movie. The acting is kind of, honestly, it's Midwestern. Like 100% pure and through, like the stereotypical stereotype of it. But it's still the whole music. It's kind of recommend that movie as well.
In my opinion, overall, single location, single room horror movies, they're not hard to enjoy. It just feels like they're really hard to define and watch. Like, what makes a single room horror movie?
Does it have to be 100%?
Yeah, I don't think it has to be 100%. But it seems that what you remember or take away from the movie most of all, it should have happened in one fucking room.
I think it's kind of almost the same thing on bands. You know, like when is a band not that genre anymore?
Oh, yeah.
Like, when are they not metal, or when are they not prog rock, or when are they...
Well, that's the beauty of prog metal, is it's in the name. It's progressive. You expecting the first album to be like the fifth, that's your mistake. Mm-hmm. That's why I like Mastodon so much. Their first album, and then now, like, from Crack the Sky on, you definitely see them getting a little bit more psychedelic with their sound and progressing. So, I mean, can't expect that too much from a...
Same with Opeth, you know, you have something that's original black or death metal, and now they're more prog metal to, I think they're kind of going back to their roots a little bit, but, you know, that's the thing though, like, I enjoy these single room, like, horrors, because I don't mind the feeling of claustrophobic, but if I'm stuck in a bathroom, chained to a wall, or if I'm stuck in a freaking cube, or if I'm on stage, and Bridget's out in the crowd, or she's stuck in the fucking room, I'm offing myself.
I'm on my way out.
It's freaking Bridget.
Freaking Bridget.